open arms towards the sun. You feel the warmth of the rays, and then you know you're alive, and you don't have to be afraid of anything, 'cause you know the truth, and the truth is love, yes it is. Wasn't what they said to you, or anything that you learned from a book or from the news. It's not like that, 'cause it's a thing. It is something that you do. Doop 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 a doo. Doop 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 a doo. Doop 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 a doo. Dib on baby did long. Doop 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 a doo. Doop 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 a doo. Doop 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 a doo. Dib on baby did love's the highest truth. Nothing could be higher than love, my friend.
Welcome to the Bassline, everyone. Bobbie Anne Cox is a powerhouse attorney who has taken on the corrupt governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, after securing a tremendous legal victory where the governor's power to detain New York State citizens in quarantine camps was overruled and deemed unconstitutional. The Hochul administration, apparently hell-bent on totalitarianism, have appealed and won't let it go. Here to discuss the state of our human rights here in the state of New York, I am delighted to welcome to the Bassline an attorney who is literally fighting for our freedom, Bobbie Anne Cox. Thank you for joining us today, Bobbie Anne. How are you this afternoon?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
Oh, I'm very well. I'm so excited to talk to you. I can't even tell you my enthusiasm because I'm very excited to host this show every week, and we've had unbelievable guests week in and week out. But I've spoken to so many doctors and scientists for the most part, which has been thrilling. But this is only the third time I get to speak to an attorney, and it's been a while, and I have so many legal questions on my mind. And the first question would be in terms of just a general update in terms of the state of affairs here in New York. Could you give everyone a brief background, I guess, as to the struggle that you've been fighting and where you stand in terms of this appeal? Because, I mean, this whole situation, it amazes me. I mean, it literally, it shakes one to the core to think that the governor wants to act in the manner of a total totalitarian dictator, that they want the right to detain New York State citizens indefinitely, irrespective of our age, with no medical or scientific criteria, just a rather arbitrary basis for detaining us and completely violating our rights in a totally totalitarian manner. And okay, you could say, oh, the COVID frenzy, everyone was a little bit crazy at that time. We didn't know what was going on. But then after it was clear that things were under control and the human race wasn't going to be wiped off the face of the earth, they've doubled down on this. And they're insisting, no, we insist. We should have the right to strip you of all of your rights. What is going on with this, Bobbie Anne? Please give us an update and take as long as you need to just get us up to speed about this struggle you've been engaged in.
Sure, yeah. Well, the regulation that you're referring to, which I successfully got struck down in a trial court back in 2022, is really horrendous for your listeners to understand what it was all about and what the governor is fighting to get back still today. This regulation allowed the Department of Health to pick and choose which New Yorkers they could lock up or lock down. They didn't have to prove you were sick. They didn't have to prove you were exposed to a communicable disease. They didn't have to have any sort of evidentiary hearing. No due notice was required. They literally could have just come and knocked on your door and said, you need to come with us. This is an isolation order or a quarantine order issued by the Department of Health. We're talking about unelected bureaucrats in the Department of Health. We are not talking about elected officials, and we are not talking about a power that came from the legislature. This was something that the Department of Health made up, with the assistance of the governor, right? Because the Department of Health is an agency, and it sits under the executive branch, which is under the governor. So they didn't have any requirement in that regulation that you had the right to an attorney until after you were locked up or locked down. That's kind of like saying, guilty until proven innocent. And the regulation, as you noted, did not have any age restrictions. They could have done this to you, but they also could have done it to your child or your grandchild. And there was no procedure in that regulation that said how you could regain your freedom once they locked you up or locked you down. And when I say lock you down, I mean they could have, as per the regulation, forced you to stay in your home. Or they could have removed you from your home with the force of police, that was also in the regulation, and put you into a facility of their choosing. You would have had no say. So that could have been anywhere in New York. It could have been a detention center, a facility of an institution, a camp. I mean, anywhere they wanted. The wording temporary residential housing is actually in that regulation. So it was absolutely 100% unconstitutional on multiple levels. And the moment that I read that regulation, I first came across it back in 2021, I knew it was unconstitutional, and I had to bring a lawsuit to stop it because this was an emergency regulation that the Department of Health and Governor Hochul kept reissuing every couple months. They'd keep reissuing while they worked to make it a permanent regulation. And it didn't even say that you had to have a state of emergency declared. So they wanted to use this regulation whenever they wanted. So another important thing to note about the regulation was that it really didn't have any procedures for regaining your freedom, which means, I'll give you an example, when we were at the trial court level 2 years ago, and I was arguing the case in front of the judge, the judge asked the Attorney General, he said, let's say you take a family, let's say you put them into isolation somewhere, or, you put them into a facility or a hospital, whatever. Once they're in there, how do they get out? And there was like a pregnant pause, and then finally the Attorney General said, well, I guess they could hire a lawyer and they could sue us. So, that you don't have to be a lawyer to understand that is the opposite of due process, right? This was the most totalitarian piece of government issuance I've ever read. I mean, I've been practicing law here in New York State for 25 years. I certainly had never come across anything like this before. It has no business in New York, no business in this country. We do not have regulations like that. So I brought a lawsuit against the governor and the Department of Health to strike down their regulation as unconstitutional. And in the spring of 2022, just over 2 years ago, I filed the lawsuit together with my plaintiffs. I'm representing Senator George Borrello, Assemblyman Chris Tague, and Congressman Mike Lawler, together with a citizens group called Uniting New York State. And we filed the lawsuit, and ultimately we won. In summer of 2022, the judge struck down the regulation, said it was unconstitutional on multiple levels. And, lo and behold, right after the 2022 gubernatorial election, Hochul decides to appeal the case. And so I spent all of 2023 fighting the case on appeal. which unfortunately, as you referenced in the beginning of this show, the appellate court did reverse the case and threw it out based on their supposed lack of standing, meaning the appellate court says that my plaintiffs don't have the right to bring the lawsuit. They've not suffered an injury, even though the Department of Health and the governor have clearly overstepped their power and reached into the legislative realm of lawmaking. Agencies can't make laws, governors can't make laws, only the legislature can make laws. And that regulation was a law. I mean, they called it a regulation, but in actuality, it was a law. And they don't have the power to do that. Laws are made by our legislators because we elect those people. And here in New York, we elect them every 2 years. We can get rid of our state senators. We can get rid of our state assembly members every 2 years here in New York if we don't like what they're doing. But you can't get rid of agency bureaucrats now, can you?
Wow. I mean, this whole situation, it's just mind-blowing to an exponential extent, because to me, it's unbelievable that they would ever do something such as this, make such a proposal, that they would have a right to strip us of our rights in this manner. And then again, it's unbelievable that they would appeal this. And then it's unbelievable how little attention any of this is getting. We just don't discuss anything that's important in our lives anymore. We're talking about celebrity nonsense and not talking about these laws that are being changed that represent a major violation of our rights. And speaking of violation of our rights, I mean, so many things were arbitrarily applied during COVID. Standards were eroded. This whole thing of an emergency use authorization and then mandating a product that was the result of this emergency use authorization, telling people they can't return to work. We had the honor of having Attorney Sujata Gibson, who, of course, stood up for the healthcare workers who lost their jobs for refusing experimental drugs. We're witnessing, as far as I'm concerned, the emergence of the biosecurity state, which is concerning and alarming. My question to you is there any recourse that we have as citizens? What can we do to raise our hand and say, hey, our rights have been violated. We want to change the relationship here. We need some recognition of the violation of our rights. Is there any way that what has transpired over the past 4 years can then be translated into some sort of legal initiative where we can get other mandates that have existed rolled back, where we can say, hey, look, the agencies involved in this have shown themselves to be dishonest, unreliable, and willing to put us at risk? Is there anything that can be done based on the experiences of the past 4 years? Is there an initiative that we can embark upon, considering what we've been subjected to?
Lawsuits have a purpose. Lawsuits are a good tool in many circumstances, but lawsuits are not going to get us out of this mess. If I have to keep bringing lawsuits, or any other attorney in New York State has to keep bringing lawsuits to push the agencies or the governor or even the legislature back into their space, put them back in line where they're supposed to be, then we are playing defense. And we're not going to win if we're playing defense all the time. What we need to do is change the people who are making the laws, the people that are making the rules. The governor, when you elect a governor, you're not just electing a governor who sits in Albany and, rules from the Capitol building. You're also electing the person who appoints all the commissioners of all the agencies in New York State. So the commissioner of health, the commissioner of transportation, the commissioner of education, all of these agencies fall under the governor, and the governor gets to appoint who he or she wants running each of those agencies. So a tremendous trickle-down effect. The governors also appoint, here in New York State, they appoint our appellate judges. So the governor says which judges are going to sit at the appellate divisions and on our highest court in New York State, which is the Court of Appeals. So people need to be very mindful when they are voting for a governor and do their homework on what that person's track record looks like. What are they supporting? What are they promoting? And then make your decision on who you're going to vote for. Same thing with the legislature. Our legislature makes the laws in New York State, and you have to live by all the laws that they make. And right now, the New York State legislature is churning out horrendous laws, and they have been for the past few years. Why is that happening? Well, in my opinion, it's happening because we have one-party rule in Albany. And what that means is there's only one political party running the show. And it's very dangerous to only have one party completely in control. You need a balance of power. And I don't really care which party is in control if they have a dominant control, meaning they don't even need one vote from the other party to pass a law, which is what's going on right now in New York. That's very dangerous for the people because there's not two sides of an argument being heard. There's not a conversation happening. It's just one party with one agenda, and they are forcing their laws and their policies on New Yorkers. And there's no consideration to the other side of the equation. So I'll be more specific with our New York State legislature right now in New York, in Albany. The entire New York State Senate is supermajority Democrat, which means the Democrats in the state Senate and also supermajority in the state Assembly, in both houses, it's supermajority Democrat, which means there is not one vote from the Republican side that is needed to make a law. So the Democrats don't have to listen to what the Republicans are arguing or asking for or what the constituents of the New Yorkers who live in Republican-led districts, your voice is not being heard. Your voice is not being heard. And if you look at a map of New York State and you want to look at it from a political angle, red being Republican, blue being Democrat, the vast majority of the counties in New York State are red, meaning they support Republican politicians. And yet, because of the cities, right, you've got New York City, you've got Albany, you've got Buffalo, and Rochester, because of the big cities in Yonkers, and Yonkers is also, I think Yonkers is perhaps the fourth largest in New York State, that are majority Democrat, that's what you're seeing. You're seeing those voices dominating in the lawmaking process for the entire state. It is very, very dangerous. We used to have a balance of power in New York 5 years ago. Up until 5 years ago, we had the New York State Senate was being majority Republican, and the New York State Assembly was majority Democrat. And so they had to talk to each other. They had to compromise. They had to have a conversation if they wanted to make laws. But that has gone away the past 5 years. And some of the laws that have been passed in the past 5 years and some of the laws that are being proposed now by this one-party rule are horrendous. So my opinion is not to have, lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. My opinion is you need to change the people running the show because you need people that think like you and me running the show. You need people that are honoring the Constitution, people that understand that our rights are 100% should be above and beyond any of these special interest groups. A far left agenda is not what all New Yorkers want. So,
and I don't even recognize this description of the left. I mean, when did the left become involved with some of this weird behavior, frankly, like just strange laws. I mean, one thing I've noticed, Bobbie Anne, is a lot of Democrats, and anyone who knows me listening to this show, hopefully you're aware, I'm independent. I do not endorse any political candidate. I do not support the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. I mean, I kind of think that they're one party pretending to be two, has been my analysis for years, and they're sort of playing good cop, bad cop within themselves, within the structure. But I will tell you from experience in talking with people and talking with family members and other people who consider themselves politically astute, people who read newspapers, et cetera, they have not a clue of the laws being passed in their name. They voted for these people, and then there are these strange laws that are these strange initiatives like the quarantine camps, like the right of a child to make medical decisions without the consent of their parents, and other such strange initiatives. And if you bring this up to people, they'll accuse you of being a conspiracy theorist. Literally, I said, no, this isn't a theory. This is going before the legislature. And then they said, don't believe everything you read. I said, no, look at the URL of what I sent you. It's .gov. I sent you a direct link to the New York State legislature. I've literally had this conversation where people thought what I was saying was fictional. And like, no, the people you voted for, these are the laws they're trying to enact. So I find it amazing that you have people, they're so passionate about their politics, but they literally don't know the laws that are being passed by the people that they voted for.
Yeah, no, they definitely don't. They definitely don't. And before I was involved in this, I've been practicing law for 25 years, but before 2020, my focus was in a different area. It wasn't constitutional law. I was focused on property tax, certiorari law, and property valuations, and real estate law, real estate transactions, that sort of thing. And when I switched into the constitutional law arena, because of COVID and the tyrannical government overreach that was spinning out of control, that's when I started to realize that most people don't even know, at least in New York State, perhaps it's different in other states, but most people don't even know who their state representatives are. They don't even know who their state senator is. They don't even know who their state assembly member is. It's very dangerous. If you don't even know who they are, then that means you're not voicing your opinion to them. You should know what's going on. You should know whether or not you like or approve what's going on. And if you don't, you should be reaching out to your state senator and your state assembly member often, not once a year, and you should tell them, hey, no, excuse me, you actually voted for that bill? Or, hey, there's this bill that I just read about that's coming up for a vote. I do not want you to vote on this bill. I want you to vote no. We the people run this country. We the people run this state. But everybody has lost sight of that. Everybody has gotten too comfortable allowing the politicians to do what they want, and now look where we are.
Yeah, seriously.
Because we let the politicians do what they want for too long.
Yep, and now we're between a rock and a hard place, so to speak. Well, I want to also, before we even continue, I just want to thank you, Bobbie Anne Cox, for just being a champion of the people. I mean, it's not every day that you get to meet a real-life champion of the people standing up for your rights. So I just want to thank you. Everyone, we're out here, we're trying to support our families, we're struggling, we're trying to survive in an increasingly hostile economic environment, political environment, social environment. So, you're actually out there fighting the good fight. It's like you're like a person of legend almost. It's like these mythological figures who fight fire-breathing dragons and this sort of thing. I mean, you're fighting like a monstrous thing, and you're doing it on all of our behalf. So, I mean, I can't thank you enough for that.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. It's very strange to me that most New Yorkers don't know all of these things that are happening. They don't know about the quarantine, isolation, regulation. They don't know about my lawsuit. They don't know that I won. And now the governor is using your tax dollars to fight me for another year now. We've already done 2 years of litigation. Now we're starting the third year.
Wow.
To try and get back a power that she and the Department of Health have no right to have, none whatsoever.
Right.
People don't know about these horrendous bills. Like you had referenced earlier, there's a bill right now which is gaining momentum in the Democrat-controlled supermajority New York State legislature that would allow children to make their own medical decisions. Kids, any age, there's no age minimum there. Kids of any age could make their own medical decisions without parental consent. And furthermore, the bill says, without parental knowledge.
Oh, my goodness. And to add to, what you were describing earlier, I think it really underscores a point that I've been trying to make, which is people in this country really have politics backwards. And what do I mean by that? Politics is you staying on top of your own party and pushing your party. If you're a rank and file member of a political party, you casted your vote for these individuals, you go out and argue on behalf of these individuals, you support the party, will then demand that they represent you in a way that you appreciate. But instead, people have it as just boo-hooing the other team, which it's like you have to just think the laws of nature are such that that's not how things work, right? As a tennis player, you have to refine your own skills, right? You can't just criticize your opponent. As a boxer, as a basketball team, what have you. You have to bring something to the table. You can't just criticize the other group and think that that makes you good. It does not. What are you doing? What would the party create if the opposition wasn't standing in the way? If they weren't standing in your way, if you couldn't blame them for anything, what kind of world are you trying to create? And I don't find that these parties can really answer that question solidly. But I want to ask you about something specifically which I find so problematic, and it gets underscored to me during the COVID period, which is the impunity that major corporations, specifically vaccine makers, have, going back to the 1986 law that grants them indemnity for the harms caused by their products. Is there any effort to reverse that, especially in light of what's transpired? Can we get that monstrosity taken off the books?
Well, so that, again...
Which I want to add to really quickly, because I think it's so brilliant. The attorney Aaron Siri made such a good point. I've made it on the air here before, and I pointed it out also in my last Substack article. But just the point that a chainsaw maker does not claim that their product is safe, but they absorb the liability inherent in being a chainsaw manufacturer. How could it be? It makes absolutely no sense when you think about it that vaccine makers claim their product is safe but need liability protection. Well, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So the product liability issue is it's definitely, the way it is structured right now, I do not agree with. It's definitely wrong. Obviously, manufacturers, whether it's, for medication, vaccine, a car, whatever, they need to have liability. If they don't have liability, or they don't know that they can be held liable if something is produced in a shoddy manner, then they have no incentive to try to produce something that is safe and works, right? So if you're a car manufacturer and you know that you're not going to be held liable if your car falls apart when somebody's driving, as soon as somebody hits more than 55 miles an hour, your car, the tire's going to fall off, or your convertible roof is going to rip off, whatever. If you know that you're not going to be held liable, why would you spend the time, the energy, the money, the resources, the research? Why would you do all that to make a well-made, safe, desirable product? Right? So it's the same thing with anything. It doesn't have to be a car. Like I said, vaccines, medications, whatever. So I agree with you. That should be reversed. However, goes back to my other point. It's not going to get reversed until we have politicians in Congress who are of like mind and want to reverse that. And how does that happen? Well, the people have to get involved. People have become way too comfortable. Or some people are just purposely oblivious. Oh, politicians, they're all so corrupt. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to know what's going on. I'm just going to stick my head in the sand and I'm not going to listen. I'm not going to turn on the news. I'm just going to watch my, movies or find other entertainment, and that's that. No, we cannot be aloof. We cannot be intentionally aloof. We cannot be unintentionally aloof, and people need to get involved. You have a voice. You can speak up. You can reach out to your, whether it's federal or it's state or it's county, whatever level of government. You can reach out to your representatives and tell them what you want and why. And the more of your friends and family and neighbors that you get to do that same thing, the more they are going to listen. If it's just one person making a phone call all the time, they're probably not going to listen. But if you get 10 friends or family or neighbors or work colleagues, whatever, and then each one of them gets 10 friends, and then each one of them gets 10 friends, this is how our country is supposed to function. It's supposed to be the people governing the politicians, and the politicians are just supposed to implement what the people want. But people have lost sight of that. They don't teach the Constitution in schools anymore. Civics classes are a thing of the past. And that's because they don't want you to know what your rights are. If you know what your rights are, you're going to stick up for yourself. If you don't know what your rights are, you're probably not going to stick up for yourself because you're not even aware that they're infringing on your rights. So it's up to the people. It really, really is. We can't have a society anymore that just says, that's okay, let them do what they want. Somebody just looked it up recently. They told me Congress's approval rating, because I had said it was around 18%. They said no, it's down to 12%.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty cynical. But, so also I want to quickly mention, I have a new Substack article, and it's gotten some pretty good traction. There's some beautiful comments from a bunch of different people chiming in. The comments are worth the price of admission on my new Substack. So Jeremiah Hosea, Jeremiah Hosea. Please look me up on Substack, but also make sure to subscribe to Bobbie Anne Cox and her Substack, which is outstanding. She comes out with articles on a regular basis. And, this is I've said this before on these airwaves, guys, it's really, for all the terrible things that are going on, it's also a very exciting time in information, because you're getting people who are very knowledgeable in various areas, people who are talented writers, people who are insightful people, just cutting out the middleman, basically saying, hey, look, if these matters aren't going to be discussed, well, I'm just going to have to go ahead and write an article myself. And there's more and more people doing that and making their thoughts and their knowledge available to the public. And like I said, for all the terrible things that are going on, it's a pretty exciting time in information. So please find Bobbie Anne Cox on Substack and subscribe right away, and spread the word,
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, my Substack, I only write once a week. I wish I had time to write more.
Well, I write once a month, so I commend you for writing once a week.
Yeah. Well, I try and do a different topic each week, and my Substacks are always based on something legal, trying to help the public understand a legal issue without using all the highly technical legal jargon. I just kind of break it down in a very easy way to understand and reason it out. So if people do want to follow along on my Substack, it's attorneycox.substack.com. And it's free. People can do a paid subscription if they want to support my work, which, of course, is always, very grateful for those that do pay for a subscription, but you don't have to. I do have all my articles are free. And then once we get into the archived articles, then you would have to be a paid subscriber. But all my new articles and recent couple months articles are all free. And I do encourage people also I am on Twitter. So anyone that wants to follow me there, I don't do very frequent posting on.
Oh yeah, I couldn't find you on Twitter exactly. If I follow you on Twitter, could I get a follow back from the amazing Bobbie Anne Cox?
Oh, how sweet! Yeah, I'm actually. I don't use my full name on Twitter. I do attorney and then _ Cox, and Cox is spelled COX. So I don't use my full name. It's just too long. So I use attorney _ Cox.
Okay, yeah, because I was looking for. Okay, I just followed you right now.
Yeah, it's really, social media, I know it is a great tool to try to reach people and have your voice heard, but I am so severely shadow banned.
Yeah, I could tell. Me too. Someone told me that I have a special type of account because I have 1,700 followers. I mean, when I started this show weeks ago, several months ago, I had 400 followers, and now just little by little it's growing. But I've had outstanding guests week in and week out, amazing guests, world-class guests, and someone brought it to my attention that my account has a special tag on it because it's a small account that has an unusual level of interaction with large accounts. So I was like, that's interesting. But
wow.
Yeah, but you could see, all of the people speaking up saying certain types of freedom-oriented things, they're all shadow banned. I mean, people with hundreds of thousands of followers, but then, only 1,000 likes, or a few hundred likes. It's ratioed or whatever, however the terminology, however you would call it. It's like there's different tiers of shadow banning, I guess you could say. But we're doing pretty well on time, and if we could take calls towards the end of the program, that would be great. These are the people's airwaves, 888-874-4888. But I would love to ask you, Bobbie Anne Cox, in terms of people have talked about a Nuremberg 2.0, because as far as I could tell, COVID and all the policies surrounding COVID were a clear and flagrant violation of the Nuremberg Code. And some people like to laugh that off, but it's not really funny. I mean, you're not supposed to be able to coerce people to take medical products, and if you tell them they can't return to work, they can't participate in society, well, absolutely that's coercion. And it really sickens me, honestly, the people who try to make the argument, well, nobody kicked down your door and held you down. Well, yeah, I wasn't forced, you're right, but there was a very severe effort of coercion against me where, yes, there was quite a price to pay for not taking an experimental medical product. So to me, the human rights violations were flagrant. What would that look like? I mean, is there any momentum? Is there anything that we can do? I mean, of course, there were the sort of mock grand jury hearings of Reiner Fulmick, but now Reiner is being detained in Mexico on probably trumped up charges. I don't know all the details about that, but there's the Free Reiner Fulmick movement, and that was sort of a symbolic thing that he was organizing. They were getting testimony from experts from all different fields and some really incredible testimony, but it wasn't an actual legal action on the books, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, what can we do to have the perpetrators brought to justice, basically? Crimes against humanity.
Yeah, I've been asked that question many times over the last few years, and my answer is always the same. We are going to get, because people say, oh, we want accountability. We want accountability. We are not going to have any accountability until two things happen. One, we wake enough people up to what's going on around us. And two, those people get involved and change who is making the rules. That is the only way we're going to have accountability. You are not going to have the Department of Justice in the United States right now do anything outside their agenda, anything that is not part of their radical agenda, which everybody can, if you just open your eyes, you can understand what they're looking and trying to do here. None of that's going to happen, even at the state levels. I mean, yes, perhaps in the red states, but we're in New York. And in New York, you are going to have zero accountability with the people that you have elected, you meaning, the mass of the population in New York State that you have elected into office right now. You are not going to get any accountability. So people need to take the time. They need to take the energy. They need to make the effort. Look, I know everybody's busy. I get it. I'm busy. I'm just as busy as everybody else, probably more so. I work 7 days a week, and it's really an incredible number of hours that I work every week. I get it. I know that people are consumed with their lives and their families and their jobs, and I totally understand. But you have to make time. If you want accountability, you have to make time. Carve out a certain amount of time. It doesn't have to be every day. It could be every other day. Carve out 30 minutes of your day to do something that is going to bring accountability. What could that be? That could be sending an email to your local representatives or your state representatives or your federal representatives, right? Who is your U.S. senator? Or you have 2 U.S. senators. Who is your U.S. congressperson, right? Send them an email. Pick up the phone. Call their office. Now, you're not going to get them on the phone, but you will get a staffer. And they typically log all of the conversations that happen that come into the office. So, write a letter. Snail mail, that still works. In fact, it works better than an email. They pay attention more, I've heard, from sitting politicians. They pay attention more to the written requests and voicing your opinion through old-fashioned snail mail than emails, but you can send an email too. People need to carve out the time and make the effort. Join a group. Join a local. There are lots of groups that have popped up in the last few years in New York State. Uniting New York State, I mentioned earlier in this conversation, that is one of my plaintiffs on the quarantine lawsuit. And if you go to unitingnys.com, that is their website, you can sign up for their they do a weekly e-newsletter, goes right into your inbox. It keeps you up to date on issues that are going on. A lot of times they will publish my latest Substack article. You will hear of events that are coming up. They have an upcoming events section in their newsletter. Go to events. Get involved. Meet more people that think like you. This is how we are going to build the community that we want, and then the accountability will come. But you're not going to get accountability if nobody's paying attention, nobody's making an effort, and the people who are currently in power stay in power. Forget it. It's not going to happen.
Right. Yeah, well, those were some good pointers right there for sure. And I wanted to ask you one last question, and hopefully a caller or so will join us. Again, the phone number is 888-874-4888. I'd heard something that along the lines of the Biden administration needing to hire more attorneys to prepare for the legal backlash after the mandates. And I also heard of them trying to pass the buck, so to speak, and say, well, all these institutions should have respected religious mandates. We didn't tell them to not regard, not religious mandates, pardon me, religious exemptions, and trying to blame the institutions that they pressured to issue mandates. Saying, well, we didn't say that we want you to disregard religious exemption, and basically backpedaling and scrambling. Do you have any knowledge about that in terms of the Biden administration, where they stand in terms of the legal fallout from the policies that they enacted?
No, I don't have intimate knowledge of that. I've heard a thing or two, like you're saying, that they are trying to pass the buck, so to speak. It wasn't our fault. Oh, we didn't make you do that. But we're seeing that not just from the Biden administration. We're seeing it also at the state level here in New York, where you have Democrats saying, "Oh no, we didn't force anybody to do anything. Oh no, we just made suggestions." So they're mimicking or they're parroting what the Biden administration is saying. To your point, and again, it is really obvious to me that what happened over the past 4 years, particularly in 2020 and 2021. Was that the government, whether it was the state level or the federal level, whatever, would say something. Oh, we suggest you do X, Y, Z.
Right.
Here are our written guidelines, quote unquote guidelines on this or on that or whatever. And then what you saw happen was the institutions grabbed hold of that, whether it was the schools or the hospitals or the whatever. And they turn them into forced rules. They turn them into requirements. But it's because the government was telling them to do it. Oh, we suggest, here are our guidelines. Now, a lot of times that was tied to financial aid, right? If you want $1 million for your school district, well, okay, we'll give you that money that came down from the federal government to the states. We'll give you that money, but first you need to agree to force the children to mask and force them to stand 6 feet apart and don't let them eat in the cafeteria. They can only eat in their classrooms. All these ridiculous, quote unquote, rules. And so the fault, the blame starts with the government. Of course it does. But it also trickles down to the people, the organizations, the institutions, the schools, the healthcare facilities, all of that, who followed along.
Absolutely. That's one of my biggest issues. And that's something that I wrote about actually in my recent Substack, which is I really think that some of the people who have been put in the position of middlemen and women, they should absolve themselves of that responsibility. They should say, no, don't make me be a person who is collecting medical documents, et cetera. That's not something that I was trained to do. That's not a responsibility that should be assigned to someone randomly. I would like a return to patient-doctor confidentiality and just a general pulling away from the system as it exists now, because it's just, to me, it's a lopsided, uncomfortable relationship at this point. But we do have a caller. We have Vernon from New Jersey on the line. Vernon, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I was calling to find out that doctors, certain medical people, and they talk about it, that for gay men who have AIDS, they're pushing something called DoxyPep or DoxyPrep, and which is supposed to prevent you from getting venereal disease. And Fauci had said something, but I'm not sure. But they have been ever since saying that they're incredible success and they work wonderful. And these two ingredients, particularly the doxy, whatever is in there, is going to prevent you from getting AIDS or anything else. And the other one is for helping you from any kind of illness, STIs, STDs, and so forth. So I was interested, did you know about it? And what are the side effects or any of that? Because I haven't heard anyone talk about any side effects from particularly this medication, but they're saying they're having 70% success and that all, particularly gay men, should just take this, which goes back to, as far as I'm concerned, to the beginning with AZT, which was a big of a problem. So that was the question.
Yeah, I mean, I, for one, am not familiar with that. I'm not a gay man myself. I don't have HIV or AIDS, so I, for one, am not looking to take any new medications, least of all for things that that are not affecting me personally. So I've heard of, anecdotally, I guess, of some new medication, but they're always coming out with new medications. And again, don't take medical advice from me. Let me make that perfectly clear. I'm not a medical specialist. I don't provide medical consultation. But I'm of the camp of take as little medication as possible and try to actually achieve good health as well as you can, which involves sleeping, eating, positive thinking, positive connection with other people, exercise, all of those things are essential, and they're all art forms in their own right. So I'm not familiar with those products, but I don't advocate for, in general, and I'm not a big believer in harmful medicine. I don't want to take anything that has a range of side effects associated with it. I mean, it seems to me like these products they advertise on television, the things that they're listing that you could possibly have as a side effect are just as bad or worse than what they're trying to prevent, which is my big question, as a matter of fact, in terms of the COVID vaccines and philosophically what it points to in terms of why on earth are medicines of any kind, vaccines so-called, or any kind of medicine, why are medicines being administered where you have a range of over 1,000 side effects, including the thing you're trying to prevent, and death? I mean, if you talk about risk reward, no thank you. I don't want to subject myself to heart conditions and neurological disorders to not even prevent a particular respiratory ailment, but merely provide myself with a window of protection, a rapidly waning so-called window of protection, and then I'm going to subject myself to horrific conditions which the vaccine injured are experiencing now. I mean, my guest previously, Danielle Baker, known as the coerced nurse, her spinal cord is deteriorating. There is going to be other vaccine-injured guests on this program in weeks to come who have just hellish conditions that they're facing. So that's just me. Don't take medical advice from me, but I'm not an advocate for pharmacology myself. But we have Pete on the line from New York. Pete, are you there?
To participate in a completely corrupt...
Oh, wait, hold on a second, Pete. Could you start over? We didn't hear you right out the gate.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, I hear you perfectly. Start over. Thanks.
Okay. The idea that we could continue to participate in a completely corrupt and rigged electoral process and expect a different outcome is an example of insanity. Until there's a complete, thorough reform of the system, we're not going to get anything we deserve. We continue to get what we deserve. There were a couple of people that put together a proposal, #unrig, UNRIG. Former Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney teamed up with a former CIA officer, put together #unrig. There are 12 provisions in the proposal. It starts off with addressing universal registration, ballot access, districts, redistricting, tightly drawn district lines, public funding of elections to get rid of the money in politics, free and equal media access, inclusive debates, including cabinet debates, which is a very important possibility. Primaries that are not publicly funded, because what you have now are publicly funded primaries for private corporations. The Democratic and Republican parties are not political parties; they're corporations. And if you look into the DNC fraud lawsuit that was filed and fought in court by the a group of Bernie supporters in open court, the DNC lawyer admitted that they had no obligation to provide a free and open and transparent primary. He said they could go into the back smoke-filled rooms and choose whoever they wanted. Election day should be a holiday. Paper ballots counted publicly, plus exit polls. You end the winner-take-all voting and have a ranked choice voting system. No secret legislation, and economic and financial integrity, in which they identify the 47 Taft-Hartley Act, which struck a major blow to the American middle and working classes' abilities to galvanize their votes and protect their interests. Cynthia McKinney also included what she calls power cells, and it asks people to organize in their own electoral district and bring in everyone from the political spectrum, from far left to the far right, sit down, discuss issues, and solve problems. That's the way it starts. Until we start doing that, getting people involved and demanding fair and transparent elections, we're going nowhere. Second issue, holding public elected officials accountable. The idea that once they get elected, they can do whatever the hell they want and not be held accountable is absolutely ridiculous. When they act outside the scope of their authority, they are subjected to personal lawsuit. They are not protected. They're not acting in their official capacity. And I would be interested to hear Bobbie Anne Cox's comments.
Absolutely, yeah, and to quickly chime in, I wanted to point out earlier that I just find it stunning that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Fauci, for that matter, and Nancy Pelosi, they all made almost identical statements saying, one, they wouldn't mandate vaccines, they wouldn't do such a thing, and two, they couldn't. They don't have the power to do so. And then just turned around and completely contradicted themselves through their actions. And it's so typical. Anything a politician says, well, count on the opposite, pretty much, because they never do what they're going to say. And in fact, they contradict themselves flagrantly with no accountability whatsoever. So yes, Bobbie Anne Cox, we're down to our last minute and a half here. If you could respond to Pete.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I have to say many people do say to me, well, why should I vote? It doesn't matter. It doesn't count. If you stay home and you don't vote, they win. That's it. Hands down. There's no opposition. They win. And as to changing the election system and the way that we hold elections, that can only be done once you have control of the state legislature. The state legislatures are the ones that, as per our federal constitution, that determine how our elections are conducted. And so you can't change it until you have control of the legislature. And you're only going to get control of the legislature if you vote and like-minded people vote, and you vote in massive numbers. There are 19 million New Yorkers. In the last gubernatorial election 2 years ago, only about 5.5 million voted. And our gubernatorial, the Republican gubernatorial candidate, Lee Zeldin, lost by only 300,000 votes. So, 5.5 million out of 19 million. Now, not all of the 19 million are voter age eligible or voter eligible at all, but certainly more than 5.5 million are. And he only lost by 300,000 votes. So it is very doable. It's very possible, but people need to get engaged.
Well, thank you so much, Bobbie Anne Cox. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all that you've done, sticking up for our rights here in New York State and just throughout this medical freedom movement, the symbolic stronghold that is New York State. And keep up the great work. Everyone, please subscribe to her Substack. It's outstanding. Make sure you get some legal information mixed in with your medical information. We need various forms of information to stay up to speed. And thank you to those who called in. Thanks for listening, and hope everyone has a great weekend. Take care.
Thank you.
Open arms towards the sun, you feel the warmth of the rays, and then you know you're alive, and you don't have to be afraid of anything, 'cause you